Hey friends, welcome back to this episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler. And if this is your first visit, I want to give you a special shout out welcome. I know that you have a lot of choices, and I appreciate it when you drop in here, because if you're looking to grow a garden with a special love of cut flowers for pleasure or for profit, you have landed in the right space. So today, friends, I want to talk about how flower farmers can truly shine during a crisis. And we're going to do it again during this current crisis of tariffs. And, I felt like it was time to speak out a little bit, because it is so hard, y'all, just in regular day-to-day business, right? I mean, I am married to a man that was part of a family business for 40 years. I've run a business for 30 years. I helped run a business prior that didn't belong to me, prior to me flower farming. And let me just tell you, it is not for the faint at heart. And it's hard. And we need encouragement. And so when these really crises happen that we have absolutely no control over them, how they happen, why they happen, I mean, they just happen, and then we have to take the fall out. I wanted to give you a dose of hopeful getting through it, because you can get through it, friend. During my flower farming run of 30 years, I've survived 3 pretty substantial crises. And now we're facing a 4th, right? And just thinking about and preparing for this, I realized that I have been doing this for a long time, y'all. I've been in business for a long time, and it does not get any easier, nor does it ever stop happening. So take your medicine and move on, right? So when such a significant event is unfolding, it seems like the sky is falling directly on you, and there are going to be no survivors, that there won't be any good to come from the crisis. But there were and are survivors, and I'm here to say that, and we're going to talk about some of the crises that we have faced. And I want you to understand this, and do not take this wrong. When we talk about these crises that I faced, the sky did fall. There were excruciating losses beyond words. But I'm speaking to this through the lenses of as a business owner. I'm not talking about the tragedy beyond that at this point in time, because it's what we do with those fallen pieces that can make all the difference in the world. Now, what my farm has survived, many of you may not even, you may have recollection, or maybe you've even read about it. I know we have a lot of young flower farmers now, but the first crisis that I faced was 9/11, which happened in 2001. That's what I call when it got so quiet that it was deafening. And I'll elaborate on that in a moment. And then in 2008, the economic crash came, which was a financial crisis that actually hit the entire world. But here in the United States, the housing collapse was pretty significant. It was really, really tough. For me personally, my husband's plumbing company, they actually stayed afloat because they didn't really do new work necessarily, but it definitely had a downturn, and it was sobering to go through that with him. And then, of course, most recently that we've completed was COVID, when the social world stopped. And that meant flowers became a challenge, right? And then now, today, we are facing financial uncertainties and tariffs. The increase in pricing, it really depends on where you are in the food chain as to how much this will affect you significantly. But it's going to cause people to slash their budgets, because basically stuff just costs more, right? So those are the 4 things that I'm kind of aiming at today. And So, when it seems like the sky is falling, but all of a sudden, because you're thinking different than everybody else, you have a business to save or to keep afloat or whatever, right? Maybe, just maybe, I can be a part of a solution or a good thing, or flip it on its head, make some lemonade out of lemons, perhaps. And this is totally speaking from an entrepreneurial position, because that's what you got to do, friends. You got to like put your big girl pants on and put your blinders on. I don't think I turned the TV on probably for 2 weeks during 9/11, during the day, during the work. So I want to share with you first what I've learned, and this comes from going through it with my business of 30 years now, where we're hitting my husband in business for 40, and then for about 15 years before I was a flower farmer, I helped somebody run their business. I was a business manager, and what I learned, please just write this down and put it in your pocket or put it on your desk to remind yourself, is that some of the brightest lights in business and in life actually come in the darkest times and events for us as domestic cut flower growers. It's that we can become a piece of a solution in really unexpected ways, which I'm going to share that with you now. So let me just explain a little bit. Now, first up, I'm going to try to talk about 9/11, my experience with that, without croaking here, y'all, because it's so funny. I really did not experience the emotions of 9/11 as much as many people did, because I did put blinders on, because I was trying to save my business. And so forgive me. So it was my 3rd year flower farming when it happened. And I can remember, what I was wearing. I had on my favorite red Harvest shirt, which I literally wore for 25 years, y'all. Pair of khakis and my pith helmet hat, because it was hot and steamy in southeastern Virginia, and it was only 8:45 in the morning. And I had been out harvesting for almost 3 hours when a neighbor, because y'all know I live in the middle of the city, right? A neighbor ran out to say, something is happening. Get to your TV now. And then she ran back inside. And I stood there for a minute thinking, what? I was stunned. First off, I was hot and exhausted already, right? And I really didn't have time for this, whatever it was, right? I still had flowers to finish cutting, and I needed to get on the horn and start selling. So I finished cutting, which didn't take, I actually just kind of thought, I'll cut more if they order more, is kind of the mindset that I hit. So I went inside to sit down and start selling my flowers. And out of character, I turned the TV on as I sat down at my desk. As instructed by my neighbor, I did what she told me. And I did it at just the second to be able to see in real time the second plane hit the second tower. I cannot remember which newscaster it was. It was one of the big guys. To hear them sucking air when they were live, they could not speak, was pretty astounding. Anyway, so sitting in utter disbelief, and remember that at that moment, we did not know this was a terrorist attack. You're still kind of thinking, how in the world could a plane hit the tower? And then, oh my gosh, a second plane, what's happening? Is air traffic control down? They were all kind of speculating, right? And so I put my blinders on, and I thought, I have gobs of flowers that I have to move. So I got on the phone and started calling my florist, and every one of them placed their normal order. But the minute I finished the order, the first thing out of their mouth is, what's happening? Because remember, in 2001, we didn't have smartphones. People didn't have TVs at work like we do now. We didn't have iPads and all that kind of stuff. They were in an information black hole. So I gave a quick rundown, and then I moved on, right? And then it started. The silence in the sky over my farm was so silent for days after the attacks. So silent, in fact, that it was deafening. You see, I live in a flight pattern for a commercial airport that also serves Langley Air Force Base and Air Force One. They do touchdowns and flyovers all the time. It all stopped during that day. And it stopped for days and days. And the silence was actually deafening. All commercial flights were grounded, which resulted in a major disruption in the flower supply shipments. Very different than COVID, where COVID shut everything down. You know what I mean? Wedding stop, event stop. That didn't really happen during 9/11. I mean, stuff was still happening. People were just all crying while they were doing it. So the florists were literally freaking out because they literally could not get any flowers. And there I was, slowly raising my hand and saying, I have flowers. I sold tons of flowers during that 2-week period. I mean, I was cutting anything standing. And as a result of that, I gained so many new customers that I might have never gotten had it not been for that terrible day. I mean, people that just didn't even look at you twice. You know, they just thought local growers were, because remember back then, y'all, flower farming was not really known. I mean, I was the new kid on the block. What do you mean you grow flowers? Our stuff comes from South America and other places, you know. So I was able to actually come to the rescue during a really, really, really bad time. So let's just pause for a moment and we'll hear more after I take a quick break here, friends. So this podcast is brought to you by thegardenersworkshop.com. And this is just one of the ways that we meet folks where they are in their cut flower, gardening, and farming journeys. We also have a companion field and garden blog, video resources, a YouTube channel, an online garden shop that stocks the same tools, seeds, and supplies, and of course my books that you hear me mention on this podcast. Other resources include our weekly live garden and shopping show that happens inside our phone app. Plus, did you know that we have online courses for gardeners and farmers, long and short? Whatever you need, we're here to help you grow great flowers. You can stay in the loop of all the happenings at the Gardener's Workshop by requesting our free farm news that'll drop in your inbox with timely how-tos and everything going on. All of this and more at thegardenersworkshop.com, and also links in the show notes. All right, friends, back to our how flower farmers can shine in a crisis. So the types of responses that occur can be in different ways for each different kind of type of crisis that I faced and that friends actually faced. It was pretty easy for me during 9/11. I mean, it was a no-brainer. First off, my regular customers were calling me and saying, I want everything you have, you know. It became really evident to me, maybe I'll call other people if I have extra flowers, right? So I want to say, seizing the moment is not at the top of our game or the top of our list probably, but it should be during these really, really hard times. Because I learned when COVID hit that seizing the moment is actually a trait of flower farmers. We're hustlers, y'all. For those who weren't in business during 2020, let me just give you a peek at some of the superstar flower farmers and their responses. And so once the shutdown began, the fallout kind of happened almost immediately, and it really depended on where you were on the business food chain as to how quick that actually happened. So I, as a result of all that, decided to host a roundtable discussion, which the link to it will be in the show notes. I hosted this on March 23rd, and I can't remember if the close down actually happened on the 15th or the 20th, but it was very fresh. It had only been days. And so I called on several of our online school instructors who, had been career-long best friends. They're the most seasoned and established flower business owners that I knew. I mean, for me to check in and say, what is going on? What are you doing? How are you doing it? I mean, and to help them as well as to help others. Because friends, I want to say the one thing that I have learned being in business, facing a problem and maybe you don't talking about it. I'm not saying you have to have a solution. Just getting it off of your chest can be so very, very helpful. And we did watch as it helped people to come together at this round table and the resulting people that listened to it. So this group represented, we had flower farmers, had a florist, and a farmer florist, and all were seeing their businesses almost vanish in just a few days. Florists were canceling orders because their shops were closed. Farmer florists and florists had weddings and events dropping like flies, y'all. It was a business nightmare and disaster. But as flower business owners seem to do, being the hustlers that they are, they wiped their tears and got busy hustling. These folks, over the course of a couple of weeks, which we were heading into what is normally the, busiest time of the year for COVID, right? The pandemic happened in the fall. COVID happened in March, right? And we watched as these business professionals flipped their businesses to meet the need of the crisis and to save the bloomin' ship, y'all, right? So I just want to go through and mention some of the things that they did. And I want to mention one really positive thing that, especially long out from this, we can look back and see a lot of businesses did some deep soul searching during this time and found different avenues that they were better at, maybe more profitable, or brought them more joy. A lot of businesses changed during this time, right? So that's one. It also became really clear as to how you have access to your actual customers, meaning you shouldn't just have it by seeing them at a market every week or just through social media. Friends, you have got to have email addresses. You've got to be able to reach your customer. COVID was a perfect example. So Dave Dowling, of course, was amongst our panel. And Dave, who was a flower farmer, if you're not familiar with him, for over 20 years, very successful, worked the year-round DuPont market in Washington, D.C., then went on to become a cut flower specialist with Ball Hort and served flower farmers all over the country, selling them bulbs and plugs and seeds and advising them and all that stuff, which he has since retired. But back in that day, he shared the story, I believe, I didn't watch the video again to verify this, but I believe he shared the story that he had a customer in the Midwest somewhere that had a huge farmer's market following. I mean, like, that was their whole business, and it was a big business. But when COVID happened, guess what? They didn't do social media, and they didn't have any email addresses. They had absolutely no way to connect because farmers markets were the first things to shut down, right? And so farmers all of a sudden that's how they lost their markets. Well, if you had an email list as a farmer, you could do direct contactless business after you figured it out, but you had that option. These people didn't. And I really began teaching at that point in time that you need to start gathering email. There's a reason that everybody wants your email address, y'all. It's their only way to contact you. So that was a lesson that we really took away from that, is that you need to own your own customer list. You do not rely on Facebook or Instagram or seeing them at a market every week, right? And then we watched as, high-end wedding farmer florist Jenny Love, who was the leading farmer florist in Philly, totally had to flip her business like overnight. And she started doing, I can't remember what she called it. It may have been porch petals, but that may have been somebody else's. Everybody came up with these really marketable names, and they were doing basically bouquet subscription drop-offs on porches. Contactless, right? You bought it online and they dropped them off, and that became their business. Because what did people crave more than any other time in the history since I've been a flower farmer? People were so into gardening and flowers that businesses boomed. It about killed the flower farmers to be able to do all this, but it saved the bloomin' ship, right? Then we watched our superstar studio owning florist, Ellen Frost, who only uses local flowers. She started doing, and I don't remember she had a cute name for it. They started selling little buckets of flowers to their community, and then she would post a video on YouTube of showing how you can arrange the flowers that she just dropped off on your porch. People loved it. Her community rallied around her because she, all of her weddings also canceled, which was the meat and potatoes of her business. She survived. And here on my farm, we had a members only market, which we've done that here, private market here on our farm, a flower market. And we quickly converted that into a contactless event. Had to move it outdoors, people had to pre-order and a lot of stuff. And it was a lot of work, but it was worth it because guess what? We sold more renewals and new shares than we ever had in the history of our time. And then, friends, that was the sweet spot that came out of COVID is people reconnected with gardening and flowers and wildlife and work beyond the office, right? And good things came from this disaster because these business owners looked and found a way of seeing not only the losses and the problems, but they flipped their business to save and to help people really get over the bump. And now the hope of this story is now in this economic uncertainty. I mean, you want to talk about economic uncertainty, all of those crises created that, right? That I would, the tariffs is a time for local growers to shine once again in their businesses. Imported flower prices, I would guess, are soaring. I have not confirmed that, but I can only imagine. That's just what's happening. Think about really walking the line and offering your flowers at the pricing that is a fair market value for you to make a profit, which is the way all businesses should be run, right? To not pull a hurricane gouge and just slam marking them up because you know that they're having to pay more for shipped in flowers, right? That's kind of like that whole hurricane gouging thing is what I'm actually thinking about. And this kind of practice can really get you in the door of those otherwise doors that you may never have been invited to walk through. Because you need to remember that this too will pass. And your business reaction during this time can be a time of cultivating very fertile ground for you to benefit your business in the future, not just solve the problem that you're facing today. And my thought is buckle down and focus on seizing the moment. It's harder than it sounds when you're in it and you're all worked up over what may happen. But take a breath and see the hole that you can fill in. And before I sign off here, I want to just drop a timely tip. It seems to me it's a little bit off subject, but I feel it would be a little amiss of me if I didn't mention this here. And it's during times like this in business that really having a backup emergency fund to help you get through bumpy and slow and tough times is how you sleep at night, y'all. You know, my personal business goal is to save 5% of each month's gross into, I have a lot of names for it. Officially, it should be called like a retained funds. That's where you have money that you've made, but you're not spending it. I call it the ebb and flow savings account. I hate taking money out of it when we do hit humps and bumps of business, but that's exactly what it is for. And it is never easy to put money in. I just keep putting the 5% in, whatever that is for you. And it's hard, but this is where times like now let you sleep at night and not be nearly as scared. And I thought I would just mention that here, that I have found more fortitude in that than anything else. So friends, remember that being the steady source of fair and quality can have a residual effect on your business for years to come. And, until the next crisis occurs. Because know this, they will always come. So consider this your practice run. So friends, thanks for joining me here on Field and Garden. Remember, you are always welcome over at thegardenersworkshop.com, because everything we do it for you. Ciao.